Hey guys, it's Tadia and this is my 2001 Integra crosser. So I've been having this issue for some time now where my car idles a little bit rough and it's probably not running at its optimal performance, so it's probably time for me to inspect the fuel injectors since I haven't done so when I got the car. So it's probably time for me to do that. So as fuel injectors age, there might be some deposits that will start building up and clogging up the fuel injectors that would actually affect the spray pattern of the fuel injector, which also would affect the combustion process. And this can cause things like misfires on the car, maybe even bad gas mileage, and also reduce performance. So if you have any of these symptoms, it might be time to check your fuel injectors as well. So now I'm going to walk you through on how to remove the fuel injectors from the Integra. In my case, I'm actually going to be shipping them off to RC Injectors down in Southern California for them to do the cleaning service on my injectors. So let's get started. First thing you want to make sure is that you are working with a cold car, because you will be working with a part of the fuel system and there might be some fuel spills. And so a hot engine with fuel spills is not a good combo. So yeah, you want to make sure that the engine is still cold to the touch when you actually are working on it. We are ready to get started. So these are wiring clips that are attached to the fuel injectors. So you want to unclip them by pressing these two surfaces right here. So you just press on them, wiggle it a little bit, and it should come right off. The second one, third one, and last one. Okay, next is to remove this PCV valve because you want it out of the way. So you can just put it aside right here. It should be fine. Next is to remove this plastic piece right here that is holding up the wiring for the fuel injectors. So you need to remove this bolt and this bolt right here, and you will need a 10mm and a ratchet to do this. Now that we have this clip out of the way, the next thing you want to do is to unclip this right here. That's your air intake temp. You're probably going to be using pliers for this because I find it a lot easier to use pliers. So all you have to do is just press it in and it should come right off. Now you can actually move this a lot more than before so that you can have access to the fuel rail right here. So the next thing that you want to do is to remove these three nuts. They should be 10mm each. So let's get to it. Now that we have the three nuts off, we can start pulling the injectors up from the holes by pulling on the fuel rail. Now before you start pulling these injectors out, you want to get a couple of rags to put underneath them so that they can catch any fuel leaks that may come out, which I'm pretty sure they will. So after that, you can start wiggling each injectors out. Last one. There we go. Our injectors are out and ready to be shipped. So what you will need to ship the injectors to RC Injectors is a small little box like this, so that you can actually pack the injectors closer to one another so that they don't hit each other during the shipping process. So that, and the next thing you would want to get is some bubble wrap. I've actually cut them into 4 little pieces so that you can take one of the injectors and then you roll them up like this, and then you can put them inside the box like that. So 3 more to go. So the injectors are packed and ready to go. So So now it's time to ship them off to RC Injectors. We got the injectors back. It says, please install cleaned injectors immediately. So let's do that. Okay, let's open up the package from RC Engineering and see what they have for us. First thing is the invoice, of course. And this is actually a detailed report of your before and after flow test results. So let's take a look at mine. So as you can see, I had fair, good, fair, poor in the very beginning. And then after service is excellent all across, which is awesome. And if you look at the cc per minute rate, it's also pretty consistent compared to what I had before. So I'm pretty sure my Integra is going to run a lot better now than, or a lot smoother than before. Now of course, the most important thing in the package would be your newly serviced injectors. So let's take a look at these beauties. So as you can see, they did a really good job in actually making the injectors look like they're brand new again. And also, if you noticed, they numbered each injector so that when you look at the report, you can refer to the respective injectors. And also, looks like these are the old parts that they replaced. So I guess I'm gonna have some spare parts, which is awesome. So now that the injectors are all unwrapped, it's time for us to put them back into the fuel rail. So to make it easy for us to put them back into the fuel rail, one of the RC Injectors technician that took care of my injectors actually suggested for us, or for me, to use any motor oil that might be laying around in my garage, and to put some of it around the O-ring so that it acts like as a lubrication. So just take a little bit of it, put it around the O-ring like that. Like that. Right, let's do a close-up for the second one. So this is number 2 right here. So you'll take off the cap. And then use a little bit of oil. And then put it around the O-ring like this. And then put it into the fuel rail like that. And it pops right in. Same thing with the third one. The third hole right here. Last one. It's number 4. And into the last one. There we go. Now that we have the injectors in the fuel rail, it's time for us to put them back into the intake manifold. Also, something to keep in mind is that there are different types of these rubber gaskets right here that goes into the intake manifold. I believe these are actually from an OBD1, so it's a 2-piece, so you would actually need a thinner piece like this that would go like that to make it one thicker gasket. In my case, for this motor, it's an OBD2, so it actually has a thicker gasket like this, rubber gasket. Luckily, I have a spare motor in the garage, and so I was able to swap out 4 of the correct gaskets. So I guess I'm going to replace them. Easy fix. So I'm going to swap these out really quick. Now I'm going to put the correct O-rings onto the injectors. So you want to actually put the side that has that groove on the inside of the intake manifold, so it goes in like that. Same thing with this one, the groove on the inside portion of the intake manifold. Two. And last one. Okay, so after you put a thin layer of oil around each of the rubber gaskets, you're gonna start putting them into the intake manifold. And also you gotta make sure that the holes on the fuel rail also aligned with the studs that's on the intake manifold, like that. Okay, what's catching here? There we go. And they're pretty much in right now, so that's good. And there you have it. Now you just have to tighten these three studs right here with the nuts that we removed before. So those are the three nuts right there. I'm gonna hand tighten them one by one. You're pretty much going to be using the nuts to also push the injectors tighter into the intake manifold. The last one right here. Now you're going to use the 10mm deep socket to tighten everything up. While you're tightening it up, you can also start seeing the injectors going into the intake manifold. Also, you don't want to fully tighten one bolt. You want to sort of just tighten it maybe halfway, and then try tightening up the others halfway as well before you fully tighten all of it. So this one's usually the most tricky part because it's all the way on this side and everything is on this side as well. Now we can tighten everything, or the fuel rail, onto the intake manifold. And where you want to be is, you want it to be kind of like snug, like this, but just slightly over snug, not too overly tight, because the studs can break. So do not use any power tools to tighten these nuts up. So again, that's kind of snug right there, so just a little bit more, it should be good. Same thing with the last one. This is usually the trickiest one. Alrighty, now that the fuel rail is fully secure, we can reinstall this plastic piece right here. The two holes will go into the stud that's on the fuel rail. Also, you want to make sure that the wiring for the air intake temp is on the correct side. You don't want to bolt these two in and then figure out that this was the clip is actually on the other side and have to unbolt them again. So make sure that this is actually on the right side of the plastic piece right here. You're going to put the two nuts back on. Now for these nuts, you don't want to tighten them too much. Just snug is good enough, like right there. Snug is good for both of these because they're just plastic pieces that just needs to be held on to the fuel rail. The fuel rail, on the other hand, is a different story because it actually has a pressure of 43.5 psi with fuel in it, so that's why you would go a little bit over. Just snug. So one very last thing that I would like you guys to keep in mind is that make sure that you have the right connector that's on your injector. I have an OBD2, but just for reference I actually have an OBD1, and if you put these right next to each other, there is a slight difference. So make sure that if you do have like a spare injectors laying around, make sure that they're the right one for your car. Last one to put in. Into the valve cover. There. Okay. So it looks like everything is intact and back in place. So now you want to jump into the car. And then now you're going to turn on the ignition of the car. So you're going to turn the ignition on. And then you're going to hear the fuel pump fuel into the fuel rail. And then you're going to wait for a few seconds before you turn it back off. And then you're going to turn it back on again. This is just to make sure that there is fuel in the fuel rail. So now that there's pressure in the fuel rail, we're going to go outside and see if there's any fuel leaks. Doesn't look like there's any fuel leaks that I can see. No little fuel fountain or any fuel spewing out. So that's a good sign, and also a sign that you did a good job. Okay, so now you're going to turn on the car. And you're going to wait for about 20 seconds just to be sure that the fuel gets around the system or goes around the system. And after 20 seconds, you're all done! Special thanks to Wayne from RC Fuel Injection for doing such a fabulous job on the injectors that I just installed in my Integra. Also, I will be posting another video that will go more in detail on the cleaning process that RC Fuel Injection does. So don't forget to subscribe. Other than that, stay tuned. Bye!